You come up thousands of miles coming through Mexico, and we're going to stop it. Get him out of here. Get him out of here. Go home to your mom, darling. Go home.
Even more interesting, video cameras were found hidden in clocks, and it's believed that he used those cameras to tape his famous friends in sex acts with underage girls for blackmail purposes. One of his victims, Virginia Roberts, said, "Epstein required me to describe the sexual events that I had with these men, presumably so that he could potentially blackmail them. I'm still very fearful of these men today." So who is Epstein running these honey traps for? Well, his best friend Ghislaine Maxwell was also involved. She was the one who recruited the young girls at Trump's Mar-a-Lago. And her father was Robert Maxwell, one of the most famous Israeli spies. He is well known for Promise Software, a program that Israeli intelligence stole, reconstructed with a backdoor, then sold to banks and intelligence agencies all over the world. Israel then had the ability to see everything important that was going on. They also sold it to the Sandia Nuclear Development Laboratory, stealing some of the most sensitive US secrets. It was Maxwell who was able to market it and sell it so successfully. Former Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir said that no one had done more for the state of Israel than Robert Maxwell. Maxwell actually reminds me of Donald Trump, who Yair Netanyahu recently said is the best friend Jews ever had. Maxwell also had deep ties to organized crime. He was the one who helped get top Jewish mob boss Semyon Mogilevich an Israeli passport. Mogilevich was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list and is now living in Russia. He owns pipelines, he's into arms dealing, child trafficking, you name it. His name has come up a lot after Trump was elected. Former senior advisor to Donald Trump, Felix Sater, is a two-time convicted felon whose father worked for Mogilevich. Sater was also the managing director of Bayrock Group and developed Trump Soho. He's being investigated for using Soho to launder millions of dollars.
If he were sitting in the room right now, I really wouldn't know what he looked like.
Mm-hmm. Trump and Maxwell have a lot in common. They're both in bed with the Jewish mob, they've both done so much for the state of Israel, and they both bought Khashoggi's yachts.
Question: did Donald Trump wear makeup for his lawyer, Roy Cohn?
Matt Drudge posted this yesterday from his @Drudge Twitter account. He posted a tweet from Roy Cohn's, credited to Roy Cohn.
And tell our audience, who is Roy Cohn?
So Roy Cohn is President Trump's longtime lawyer. Officially, he represented quite a few mafia officials in New York City. He passed away in 1986 from AIDS, but is considered to be a longtime mentor, both in business and in social aspects to the now President, Donald J. Trump.
Okay, so what did Matt Drudge tweet yesterday?
Matt Drudge tweeted a well-known quote from Roy Cohn. It stated, "I don't want to know what the law is. I want to know who the judge is." Now, the origins of this quote stems from Roy Cohn's time working at a private law firm in New York called Sachs, Bacon & O'Shea. Later became Sachs, Bacon & Boland, named after Tom Boland, one of the men actually that was on Robert Maxwell's boat in 1989 in that infamous photo we brought forward last week. But this tweet is very ominous because, one, this tweet itself indicates, let's say, the activities of a lawyer that might be a little bit different than the average bar-certified lawyer, that they don't care necessarily what the law is, but rather which judge they have in the case.
So Roy Cohn's father was the Grand Poobah.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking the Grand
International
Poobah.
President.
The international Grand Poobah of all the Jewish Freemasons.
And this dates back to May 23rd of 1932. And I found, actually, I was able to source this to the Jewish Telegraph Agency. They did a report on a dinner that was held in New York, which named him as the international president of the organization.
So now we have Cohen's father, president, international president, Grand Poobah of the Jewish Freemasons through B'nai B'rith, his son, Roy Cohn, who is an attorney and was Donald Trump's mentor.
Right.
Audio Jungle.
Vanity Fair, right?
Sorry, Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair.
Yeah, so it's the 32 for Control. Now, the article was published by Vanity Fair on January 25th, 2019. It was titled, "Where is My Roy Cohn?" Digs into one of the 20th century's most evil men. There it is on screen. Now, see that photo there? That featured image. Obviously, the man wearing the peacock headdress is the Roy Cohn, mafia lawyer, longtime mentor to Donald Trump.
So now you got a young Roman soldier next to him.
Yes, and what's weird about the young Roman soldier is that there's actually a caption the Vanity Fair included on this photo, and it read, "Roy Cohn and Donald Trump in a still from Where's My Roy Cohn?"
Now, we're not making this up. This is you can go to this article online right now.
Go to vanityfair.com.
And look for that.
The article was published in what, January?
January 25th, 2019, titled, "Where is My Roy Cohn?" Digs into one of the 20th century's most evil men.
Now, why this is interesting is that we had just read minutes ago that there is a collection of photographs and videos from Roy Cohn.
Never before
It's
seen.
never been seen till today. And there is one of them. And now we have Matt Drudge mysteriously tweeting about Roy Cohen's quote, "I don't care about the law, just tell me who the judge is."
Yes. And there's two judge connections. Obviously, we've read that Roy Cohn potentially helped President Trump's sister become a judge, but also the judge in the current case, the Epstein case, has a tie to Steve Ross, which we've already detailed the connection to Robert Maxwell, the Mossad agent.
Okay, so is this a Halloween party?
No, it appeared to either be a birthday party or a costume party at Studio 54. Now, Studio 54 is in New York City. It was long alleged that Roy Cohn would use this venue to both host parties, but also host elite gatherings, fundraisers, where there would be a lot of young men present.
In fact, this Vanity Fair article, the producer of the film, is it, how's he pronounce his name? Matt
Tyranauer.
Tyranauer?
Tyranauer.
Okay. We'll just call him Matt for right now until I practice his name. It says he was granted exclusive access to Cohen's personal archive of never-before-seen photos and videos. He is forbidden to say how they came into his possession. Photographs of Cohen at splashy parties surrounded by attractive young men. Now, that's what's in this film that's going to be released in September.
Right.
So there's going to be stills and video from Roy Cohn, who's now dead, that nobody has seen. That's in this video. And this first one right here that Vanity Fair claims is Roy Cohn standing next to a young Donald Trump, and young Donald Trump is dressed like a Roman.
He's got makeup on, Rick.
Centurion. He's wearing makeup. He clearly is wearing makeup. That's why I was asking, is this, what kind of party is this? Well, now, the Trumpites watching us right now are saying, prove that that's Donald Trump. How do we prove it?
Well, first of all, the article was published January 25th of this year. All right, and so this photograph, and it's amazing that it has been out here this long, and really no one has taken time to look at that caption that Vanity Fair put under the picture. If it had been false, don't you think that there would have been something from Mr. Trump or from his representatives that would be, challenging that if it was false?
Look, the first time I saw it is when Edward brought it into my office a couple of days ago.
Yeah, we'd actually used this story, not knowing this was, we hadn't read the caption. We were using this story to talk about the connections of the Epstein case. There was some information there relevant to our Godcast last week, but it was not till last night we read the actual caption for the photo and we were flabbergasted.
We weren't looking for this. We were looking for information on Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
And actually, we were in Doc's office.
Yes.
When you showed
Post-show, kind of just talking about the rest of the week.
and we're all staring at the screen and going, no, that doesn't say Donald Trump.
But it did. Roy Cohn and Donald Trump.
So I did the due diligence. We actually, what I've pulled this is the specific part of the trailer, again, of Where Is My Roy Cohn, where this photo, this still showed up. Actually, it showed up on a newspaper article. I'm going to show the audience and I'll explain some of the background we did today to look into this.
Newspaper from when?
The date on the newspaper is June 28th, 1972, and it appears to be an edition of the Times, referring to the London Times.
And 72 is when this party took place?
Yes, from what I've read about this, there was a party that Roy Cohn hosted at Studio 54 in 1972, which is interesting because the Daily Caller, owned by Tucker Carlson at the time, 2006, claimed that President Trump met Roy Cohn in 1973. So this would have been before the alleged first meeting date.
All right, so let's look at the old newspaper.
Cohn investigating homosexuals very aggressively.
But he was the one who threw the good parties.
And there were rumors he was picking up male prostitutes.
Right here, this is the newspaper.
Okay.
The Times. Roy Cohn spotted at Studio 54. And it was a little bit faster, but the other parts of this, I was able to run down.
Can we go back there and just hold it at that? Can you guys just...
Yeah, control, can you put it up and just freeze it?
Freeze it so we can't talk that fast.
So as they pull it up, and this is from the trailer, from Where Is My Roy
There you
Cohn.
go. All right.
So this is right here.
Back it up so that we can hear. We want to see the masthead of the newspaper. All right. When you
So
get
as
to
they bring
the
it to it.
Times masthead, just hold it there. There we
There
go.
you go.
All right. Now leave it there.
So as you see here, the Times. Now the Times, some might think is the New York Times, but that's not exactly how the New York Times presented their
It
newspaper.
looks like the
72.
masthead of the London Times.
Yes, and there's actually a copyright which indicates it is the London Times. I have to see on the left there, the Times.
But it says New York.
Yes, New York. So it would have been something. It would have been the U.S. version, published, printed according to this in California, published in New York according to the Dateline on Monday, June 28th, 1972.
All right. Roy Cohn spotted at Studio 54. Then the notorious lawyer seen late last Saturday.
So that would make the party June 26th then.
Yes, and then there's
25th, June 25th, I believe. But yes, around on that day, the last Saturday before.
All right, and so there's the photograph of Roy Cohn, the notorious lawyer. Notice they're calling him notorious.
This would have been in 72.
Yes, and he's at this costume party with a young man in a costume and makeup, and according to Vanity Fair, that young man is Donald Trump.
Yeah, so we took this further. Let's see if we can compare photos from that are confirmed to be President Trump in 1972 and just do a side-by-side. Is this really our current president in 1972 dressed up like a Roman centurion with Roy Cohn, his long-term mentor, who is known to carry around 2 to 3 young men that he may or may not be in a sexual relationship with?
And look, I know the Trump supporters are saying, why are you showing this? Well, look, months ago we showed you Beto O'Rourke in his onesie.
Yes, dressed up like a rabbit.
Yeah, we said, isn't that kind of weird? That's weird. There's an adult man dressed up like, whatever he was dressed up as, a rabbit or whatever.
Rabbit rock star, I think.
Look more like a goat.
Rabid.
Look more like a goat.
And now here you have a young man, if you look at the photograph, he has lipstick, he has mascara, eyeliner, blush.
In the 70s.
Right.
In the 70s in New York City, you didn't do that.
Right.
Okay. That was really extreme. So take it.
So we did side-by-side comparisons. It'd be 34 for control. We took a photograph actually from 1972. It's confirmed to be President Donald Trump. We did a side-by-side with the photograph of the young man. So this is going to show you, we're overlapping the photograph with the man, the centurion, the one that Vanity Fair noted in their caption was Donald J. Trump. I want to go to the still for 35. We try to compare this. If this really is the president, around, let's say, 27 years old, how does it compare to even his kids around that same age? So we did a comparison between, President Trump, 1972, and there's his son. I mean, they look very much alike. This is a real photo of President Trump on the left, and Eric Trump is one of his sons through Ivana Trump, his first wife. Now, what I'm going to do is going to compare Eric Trump with the photo of the Centurion. This is the comparison here. Look at that. That's an incredible similarity. Again, this is not us past just looking at a comparison of photos. This is Vanity Fair putting in caption that this is Donald Trump dressed up as a Roman centurion with makeup.
And what is
with a notorious mafia attorney who was known to be gay and surround himself
had a lust for young men
and was as crooked as you could be. And his mentor, Donald Trump's mentor, by his own words.
Yes.
He said he was his mentor.
Well, I also want to correct one of Roy Cohn's other proteges, Roger Stone. I wanted to make sure everyone knew in an interview he actually did with the New Yorker in 2008 that his mentor wasn't gay. According to Roger Stone, this would be 30 for control, Roy Cohn was not gay. He just liked to have sex with men. That's from Roger Stone about Roy Cohn.
There was a NBC interview with Cohen in the 1970s. He was talking with Linda Ellerby.
I remember her.
From Nickelodeon.
Right.
Okay. And Cohen held up a portrait of himself with Donald Trump alongside a letter from Trump. Now, this is an interview on NBC in 1970s. Now listen to what, quote, Cohen waxes almost sexually about the beauty of their friendship. This is the quote from Matt, the producer.
Yes.
And brags that Donald writes to him that Roy is his best friend, and then in this kind of giddy, almost excited voice, reads the letter. So this is part of the movie. So Matt's describing what's in the film. It's going to be shown in September. I'm telling you, there's something in this film that's going to shock people.
Well, think about this. He took this from let's say, a hidden treasure trove that Roy Cohn made sure would be preserved and also would remain private until it could potentially be put into play. This was the mindset of Roy Cohn, according to many of the officials, his close friends, associates we quoted here today. But you think about this, why is it coming out now? And who has directed this photograph into the hands of this documentarian? Because they would have to put it in their hands dating back maybe to 2017, 2018. This documentary wasn't made overnight.
Hey, Red Pill Infowar here. Okay, so what you've been watching so far is just a little bit of background information dug up by Vigilante Justice and True News team. And, there's a lot more to be dug up. It's kind of just the tip of the iceberg. It was to wet your whistle for what's coming up with Whitney Webb. Whitney Webb, amazing journalist. This young lady, she has really gone just to the edge of the envelope. I mean, there's even more information out there than what she has dug up, but she has gone pretty far back. She shows how this entire blackmail, child sex professional blackmail operation stuff goes way back, even back to the times of Prohibition. In her expose, she exposes people like Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the daughter of Robert Maxwell. And he's a well-known British media mogul and also was known to be a secret Mossad spy. Ghislaine Maxwell was most likely Jeffrey Epstein's handler. And that means that if she is his handler, that means that Ghislaine is not working for Jeffrey Epstein, but vice versa. Epstein works for Ghislaine, and she guides him. as he runs this professional blackmail ring to ensnare important people and politicians and maybe even people in the military in our country. Yeah, he's most likely a Mossad asset, which is running this professional child sex pedophilia blackmail operation, and it's under the careful guidance of Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of Robert Maxwell, ex-secret Mossad spy, aka British media mogul. She shows how Trump is connected at the hip with Roy Cohn, who was known as the notorious lawyer. How he's connected to Jefferey Epstein and the Clintons, which, that part we know. We've been seeing that in the news. That's pretty old stuff. And she also shows, and True News shows that he's connected to Robert Maxwell, Mike Wallace, Senator John Tower, Stephen Ross, all these Mossad agents or Mossad bosses and media moguls. So as you watch this, you'll realize that Trump goes back at least to 1972. Heck, I was like 4 years old in 1972. Trump's connections go way back, probably further than when I was born. Maybe some of you were born. So I just don't see how the Trump people don't understand this. But it's because they're not getting the information. Hopefully, if you're in the Trump camp and you're watching this video, you'll pay attention, take notes, and you'll get the information so you can finally see what's really going on. Please try not to bias yourself against this information. I understand. I almost fell for Trump. Except when I saw him on the Alex Jones show, when I saw Alex Jones launch Trump and ask him if he was going to be a good president and serve the interests of the patriots, and he gave this vague answer and never really answered the question. And it wasn't just that one show. I mean, I had been watching Alex Jones for 10 years, and so I caught, as soon as Trump came on the show, I caught all the episodes. And just a few episodes in, I understood who Trump was, that he was just kind of faking things. So, and I tried to warn people in 2016. I wrote articles, and no one would listen, and everybody thought, they kept saying, would you rather have Hillary? Well, of course not. Hillary was obviously, and if you look back in hindsight now, she was obviously put up there as the boogeyman to keep you from voting for anyone else except for Trump. And I tried to tell people that, but nobody wanted to listen. Hopefully you will listen now. Another thing that gets uncovered in here is the fact that Roger Stone, remember Alex Jones's right-hand man, if you're an Alex Jones fan, if you're an InfoWars fan, he brought on Roger Stone, and they were like real close buddies. Roger Stone was also, just like Trump, a protege of Roy Cohn, the notorious lawyer, the mobster, the guy who died of AIDS because, he was running blackmail rings and having sex with young men. This whole thing, it just goes, the deeper you get, it's like digging into manure, it just gets smellier and smellier as you get deeper and deeper. And remember, Donald Trump is famous for saying that famous phrase, "Where's my Roy Cohn?" And Roy Cohn was like this corrupt dude who could he could fix anything, fix any politician. And that leads me into the segue for this documentary, which we're going to take a look at here real quick. It's called Where's My Roy Cohn? And it is produced by one Matt Terranauer. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get into that, take a look at that trailer, and then we're going to move on from there. And this promises to be a very informative and information-packed show. When we get to the interview with Whitney Webb, you're just going to be blown away. So there's all that. Let's get into the trailer, and then we'll move on from there.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Last question today. What makes Roy Cohn tick?
Dora Cohn wanted a different son from the son that God gave her. And that imbued him a sense of shame about who he was. His father gave him the language through law and politics to express his shame.
Roy Cohn's contempt for people, his contempt for the law, was so evident on his face that you knew you were in the presence of evil.
He was like a caged animal. If you opened the door, he would come out and get you.
He's this bridge between the legitimate and the illegitimate world.
When John Gotti walked into a bar and shot a guy in the head, Roy managed to get Gotti off.
We have Cohn investigating homosexuals very aggressively.
But he was the one who threw the grid parties.
And there were rumors he was picking up male prostitutes.
He could pull strings and bring people together. He could pull strings and make people do things.
I was in his office when Nancy Reagan called and thanked him for getting her husband elected.
Cohn looked at Donald Trump as a protege.
Donald had the money, and Roy had the balls and the shrewdness.
Attack. Don't settle. Don't apologize. Attack.
When you look at Cohn's life, you're shining a light on demagoguery, hypocrisy, and the darkest parts of the American psyche.
According to Roy was responsible for everything important that happened in the United States.
Apart every single time we can. I am joined today by award-winning journalist and incredibly thorough reporter, the one and only, the fucking amazing Whitney Webb. Whitney, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. You have dropped the fucking hammer on
yeah, dude.
on Jefferey Epstein and what made a Jefferey Epstein possible. So if you could just first of all, man, tell us how you got onto this particular project, because you and I had originally connected about some other stuff, and how did you kind of stumble into this? And while you're doing that, I'll pull up the article so the audience can see.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, originally I was doing a lot of reporting, and I still had to conclude a series on it about the threat to Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, right? And you know, during that time, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested out of nowhere. A lot of people, including myself, thought he was just going to get away with it back with the 2008 plea deal, and then all of a sudden, you know, he gets locked up. And then, you know, it came out a few days later that Alex Acosta had arranged that plea deal originally because Epstein was allegedly intelligence. And then I was like, holy crap, I've just personally, you know, because I was like, I want to find out what intelligence agency he's working for.
Yeah.
Because people were like speculating and all this. And I was like, well, a lot of people are saying the Mossad, but the only proof is like Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, which is an interesting connection for sure. But I mean, it could have been CIA, like joint CIA Mossad, because they cooperate a lot, you know?
Yes.
Or, you know, some other crazy shit. I mean, who knows, right? And so, you know, I was looking into it and I was thinking, well, I know that the CIA has a history of doing this sort of stuff, you know, sexual blackmail operations. And so maybe if I dig into the history of that, like those past ones in like the 80s and the 70s, I might find some crazy stuff. So, you know, as I was, I read this book that I have right here to start, Doug Valentine, The CIA as Organized Crime. I highly recommend it. Doug Valentine's amazing. And in there I came across a page about Mayor Lansky, who's this, you know, notorious mafia crime lord from the Prohibition era. And it was talking about him, that he in 1939 was using women that were linked to the mob and sending them off to lure, you know, all these diplomats and politicians and police officials and then record them in sexually compromising situations. And so there I was like, well, that's nuts, because I also know from other stuff that Lansky and all this, he had connections to the CIA. He worked for the CIA during World War II in a covert program that was called Operation Underworld. He had a lot of connections to the CIA. He also had dirt on J. Edgar Hoover and all this other stuff, which is why Lansky was, you know, the only mob guy, the famous mob guy from the 20s, that wasn't murdered on the street, and he died an old man in 1983, and he never spent a day in jail. And, you know, that's because he was super well connected, and he outfoxed pretty much all the other mobsters, and he got in bed, you know, with the intelligence agencies.
So yeah, Meyer Lansky's whole history is fascinating, and this is stuff that you know, Hollywood has gotten into almost in a celebratory fashion, and you have to, on some level, know that the people who are producing these mob flicks and the people that are part of this actually like giving information on Meyer Lansky, like, you have to know that they're either fully aware that he was part of these blackmail schemes, peddling underage kids for sex to fucking industry titans and politicians and whatnot, but it's the one thing that you never hear mentioned anywhere in film or reporting, unless it's like a really obscure blog.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Hollywood. This is going to be in part 2 of my series. Lou Wasserman, who was the longtime head of MCA, which was later bought by the Bronfman family, he was actually super connected to the Meyer Lansky mob interests. And he is the power behind Ronald Reagan. He's responsible for Ronald Reagan's film career, later his TV career, and he was super influential in getting into the White House. And, you know, as I bring up at the end of my article, there's a lot of connections to the Reagan White House that come up in what's going on here. But anyway, going back to how I stumbled upon this, I was looking at Meyer Lansky. I like dug more into him, and I saw the name Bronfman come up, right? Because he was working with Samuel Bronfman, who's like the patriarch of the Bronfman family that includes Edgar Bronfman and Charles Bronfman, and, you know, people that have been in the news more recently. Edgar Bronfman's daughter is Claire Bronfman. I think the other one is Sarah. And, you know, they've been in the news, of course, because of the Nexium sex cult, which was another blackmail, sex-based, you know, operation about getting dirt on people. And so I was like, well, that's weird. Maybe there's a connection there. And so, you know, I was looking and I was reading through a Bronfman biography. And then, you know, I stumbled upon this passage that I just thought was super insane. You know, and I linked to this Bronfman biography in my article. So people can read the ebook, right? Because it's online. I stumbled upon this part where it talks about the other industry titan of the liquor industry in this era, who's a guy named Louis Rosenstiel. And it was talking about how Louis Rosenstiel's fourth wife went to all these parties where Louis Rosenstiel was running this sexual blackmail operation, basically with underage kids, with all these powerful people, like the first director of the FBI was seen there, J. Edgar Hoover, right? And it specifically mentions that the boy prostitutes were there for the enjoyment of a specific person, Roy Cohn. And of course, you know, Jeffrey Epstein's in the news, right? And he's in the news mainly because he's connected to Donald Trump. Roy Cohn is Donald Trump's mentor, and he's also Roger Stone's mentor, who was a Nexium lobbyist, right? And so it just like, I saw that and I was like, what is going on? And I thought that was crazy. So I went, I did like well, you know, sometimes I do this. I went on Google Books and I just did a search of like Louis Rosenstiel and Roy Cohn to see what came up. And there were like, it was buried in several biographies. It was buried in a biography of J. Edgar Hoover by former BBC journalist Anthony Summers, in some other places. And I went down the rabbit hole, dude, and that's where this article came from. And basically, you know, the Roy Cohn thing is huge because it really connects all of this stuff together. And as I'll get into more in part 2, but I really tease this at the end of my current article that's online. Roy Cohn was super plugged in to so much stuff. I mean, he had, so like when Trump was, becoming president and was like gonna win the election and all this stuff or whatever, a lot of attention came back to Roy Cohn, but all the media reports, most of them in MSM, right, were painting Roy Cohn as like this sleazy mafia lawyer, and that's pretty much all they said about him. But what they didn't say is that this dude was so plugged into the Reagan White House. His best friends were Barbara Walters. He was super good friends with Rupert Murdoch. He was friends with all of these huge big name people, and a lot of those people, ton of them, are directly associated with Jeffrey Epstein, which is nuts, dude. And it turns out that those people that were associated with Roy Cohn died in August 1986. Just a few months later, in early 1987, Donald Trump and a bunch of these other names that ended up in Jeffrey Epstein's little black book all meet Jeffrey Epstein just like months after Roy Cohn dies. And Roy Cohn, as I mentioned earlier, was involved in these sexual blackmail operations, but it actually turns out, and this is according to the former head of the Human Trafficking Division of the NYPD. This is according to New York lawyers who investigated Cohn on behalf of clients. In official hearing testimony from the 1970s New York Committee on Crime, that Roy Cohn was running, a sexual blackmail operation involving children, specifically young boys, out of the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, New York. And it's worth pointing out, too, and I'll get more into this in part 2, Donald Trump bought the Plaza Hotel in 1988. And, there were these reports that came out, mostly it was like 2016, when the election was going on and stuff, that Donald Trump had, these crazy cocaine party, like fueled cocaine parties or whatever, where all these teenage girls had been cited there. And at the time, I was like, oh, just another one of those articles being like, look how sexually lewd Donald Trump was. And I kind of ignored it. But after all this stuff that I found about Roy Cohn, Donald Trump's mentor, right, running a second out of the hotel, and then Trump buys it. And, it's just like these connections are nuts.
And here's the amazing thing about Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn is, I think, the only reason that Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan acknowledged that AIDS existed, because he died at 56 years old. Yeah. And Nancy Reagan made this speech about how it finally personally affected her and entered her life, and so she. Yeah.
And it was because of Roy Cohn. That's how close the Reagans were to Roy Cohn, and this is nuts. Actually, according to Roy Cohn's switchboard operator, who I'll be talking about a good bit in part 2, the person that called Roy the most often was Nancy Reagan and also former CIA Director William Casey, were the two most frequent phone calls to Roy Cohn. Actually, the Reagans got Roy Cohn into an experimental AIDS treatment that was super exclusive and low-key. No one really knew about it. Because it was super, I think it was even government funded, but it was really hard to get into, and they got Roy Cohn into it to try and save his life. Didn't work, and he died in 1986, like you said, from AIDS-related complications. But he maintained till the end of his life that he was dying of liver cancer, and that turned out to be not true. So,
and I'm glad you mentioned William Casey, because he's where the quote, "We'll know our disinformation campaign has worked when nothing the American public believes is true."
Yeah. And also I'm going to get into this more in part 2. Also, William Casey was part of a small group of Reagan officials that, as part of Iran-Contra, set up some sex trafficking rings in Latin America involving children.
Which would also involve Elliot Abrams, right?
It very well could. I think we're going to see a lot of crazy shit start to come out. I really hope my article, I tried to keep a tight lid on it until this first one's out. But now, honestly, now that I have this out there, I really hope people find all these because there's so much. Connecting Roy Cohn and Jeffrey Epstein. Once I do that, I'm pretty confident that it's going to really expand how big this is.
Well,
and how long this has been going on.
There's long been talk, at least in more fringe or conspiracy circles, that Epstein was Mossad protected and then therefore CIA protected, and that when Alex Acosta, as you mentioned earlier, said he belongs to intelligence, the only thing that was confusing about that was which intelligence agency in terms of the people that he was responding to on the Trump transition team. So they just, whatever, okay, that's fine. You did say that we could go into the second part of the article a little bit when I had you on the show today. And that's something that we can get to, but I have some stuff written down here that's definitely worth noting, and this is stuff you were dropping hints about throughout the week about your article, and it's the nickname Supreme Commander and Field Commander, and what that means in terms of the operation that Rosenstiel, Bronfman, Lansky, those guys were running and how that affected American politics, especially with Joseph McCarthy and J. Edgar Hoover?
Okay, that's kind of a big question. Well, let's start on the nicknames first. So this I found super weird. So I was looking through some archive newspapers, and I came across one from 1969 talking about Rosenstiel, Cohn, and J. Edgar Hoover, their relationship. And it came up here that, when Roy Cohn and Louis Rosenstiel see each other in public, they like hunt each other out. They like look for each other, and then they like stand up and salute each other, And I was like, that's weird. And then it was like, so Roy Cohn calls Louis Rosenstiel Supreme Commander, and Louis Rosenstiel calls him Field Commander. And then I remembered when I was going through stuff on Mayor Lansky's wife talked about how Mayor Lansky always called Rosenstiel Supreme Commander. And I was like, why is Roy Cohn, who's this, I show in my article, running this sex trafficking operation, why is he calling this guy Supreme Commander? This super powerful crime lord, And on the other side of it, I'm like, why is the crime lord, the super connected sex trafficker, they're calling this guy Supreme Commander? Like, what the hell? And he has nicknames for them too that are like military rank stuff. And let's remember too, for anyone that's ever studied like how the mafia or the mob in the U.S. has worked, I mean, there's a lot of military themed titles there. Soldier, lieutenant, so Supreme Commander, I don't know, it doesn't really sound any higher up than that. And I don't really speculate on this in my article, but in terms of Supreme Commander, I sort of think that it's possible because there's so little. I couldn't find a single biography written and dedicated to Louis Rosenstiel. I couldn't find one. There's not a lot of information on his early life. So the official story, there's some weird stuff there. So officially, he was born in Ohio. Then he goes to work for his uncle in Kentucky at a distillery. Then Prohibition happens, and he opens his company. He creates his company, Shinley Liquors. And then all of a sudden, this guy, he dropped out of high school, right? He dropped out of high school. He didn't have any education. He supposedly was just like working this like crappy, labor-intensive job at his uncle's distillery. And then, into his New York Times obituary, there's this big gap. And then in 1922, Rosenstiel's vacationing on the French Riviera, and he meets Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill tells him, hey, you should prepare for the end of Prohibition. This was 1922. Prohibition ended in like 1933. And so apparently this guy spent officially all of these years, desperately preparing because he's like, Winston Churchill has to be right, because he's Winston Churchill. Right. And then he arms this business and he becomes rich only after Prohibition. But, it came out later, as I noted in my article, that he was bootlegging and he was involved with the mafia and all this stuff. But, he's connected to Winston Churchill in this chance meeting. That's insane. And also the fact that he was supposedly preparing by buying up all these closed distilleries, and that was financed by Lehman Brothers, which is this super powerful elite Wall Street firm, giving money to this random dude who's a high school dropout with this crazy idea that he got from Winston Churchill. This doesn't make any sense. Also worth pointing out, too, going back to the Bronfmans, who were also big bootleggers and associated in this whole crime consortium or whatever that was going on during the time, that Edgar Bronfman married into the Lehman family through Ann Loeb, his first wife, where most of his children come from. So that's nuts because Ann Loeb was the daughter of the main guy. I think her mother actually was the heiress to all the Lehman Brother Wall Street interests. Oh, wow. So that's nuts. So there's definitely something going on there, but I couldn't find a single biography on Louis Rosenstiel. So if anyone can find out what the heck that guy was up to, and obviously that official story is complete bunk. It doesn't make any sense. So there might have been some other power pulling the strings on this guy. Hopefully that'll come.
That's the thing, and that's why I wanted to bring up Joe McCarthy and Hoover's FBI, because everything you're talking about right now, this predates even the OSS, and the FBI
which is the precursor to the CIA for people that don't know. So the Office of Strategic Services.
Yes, and the FBI itself was kind of an infant agency and was rife with mafia corruption anyway. So it almost seems like this particular sex trafficking, blackmail, pedophile ring is at the core of both the FBI as an institution and the CIA as an institution. That, and of course with the CIA,
I think that's why we're seeing this, reflected in Epstein, going on with Epstein right now. The prosecutor prosecuting Epstein is James Comey's daughter, the daughter of the former FBI director. Jeffrey Epstein was an informant for Robert Mueller, also another former FBI director. The FBI is balls deep.
And Comey's daughter is out of the public corruption division, not the sex trafficking or sex crimes division. It's an entirely different branch than what you would think would be associated with it. It's like Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother being prosecuting the Awans. Because that's how that came.
It's comparable. And then you also have the fact that Bill Barr, who was super connected to the Iran-Contra stuff, he was George Bush Sr.'s attorney general. He worked for the CIA.
Yeah. With George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, he's connected to William Casey too, and his father worked for the OSS, which is the precursor to the CIA. And his father is the one that recruited and gave high school dropout Jeffrey Epstein this job as a math teacher at one of the most exclusive private schools in the whole country.
So all you need to be is an overtly sociopathic high school dropout with deep ties to the mafia and federal agencies. And you too can get a job at Dalton or get a loan from Lehman Brothers. Wow. When I had Cynthia McKinney on this show, she made a point to bring up how Ivy League schools and universities in general are kind of ground zero for where COINTELPRO moved to, and we see Larry Summers was president of Harvard when Epstein and Dershowitz were running around like crazy all over there. These guys have clear ties to intelligence agencies. It all sorts, it comes together in one big, ugly picture.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring up Larry Summers. I'm going to be getting in this in the part two. A lot of people in alternative media especially have been talking about Genie Energy for the past few years, right? And their super weird board of advisors. Their board of advisors, pretty much all of them can be connected to what's going on right now, and that's insane. Larry Summers and Bill Richardson are connected to Epstein. Rupert Murdoch is connected to Epstein and Roy Cohn. And James Woolsey, the former CIA director, when the the Omaha, Nebraska Franklin cover-up sex ring was going on, he was, I believe, in charge of the CIA's airport in Nebraska.
That's right.
So
and
that's
I have written down in my notes that this ties directly into the Franklin scandal, and that Roy fucking Cohn is at the center of that too. Or at least part and parcel of it.
Well, I wouldn't say, I don't know if I'd say he was at the center of it, but because a lot of this came out about the Nebraska thing. Roy Cohn was like dead, right? So I think what's going on there, and I'll get into this one part too, there's a lot of evidence, including in John DeCamp's book, who really wrote the book about the Franklin cover-up, right? That Roy Cohn had successors. He had successors in different places. He had them in D.C., he had them in New York, and apparently this was also going on in San Francisco as well. And actually, it's possible that if Epstein was one of his successors, which really seems to be the case because of the huge amount of overlap, that he was running it in New York and in Florida. But I also remember too, in terms of implications of what all this means, Epstein's activities were not exclusive to the United States. And if anyone reads one of his victims' depositions, or her affidavit, came out recently, Virginia Roberts, she was talking about how Epstein took her to London and Paris, and she was involved in this stuff in Europe. So this is definitely not U.S. exclusive. In my articles, I'm just going to be focusing on the U.S., right? But let's also keep in mind that if Jeffrey Epstein was doing this in multiple countries, it's very highly likely that this is bigger. And also Peter Lansky, going back to him way back, in the first mention I ever saw of this in 1939, honey trap, sexual blackmail operation that he sent Virginia Hill to run. That was actually, he was running that in Mexico, trying to entrap American officials that were involved in Mexican politics, which is crazy because actually he and the mafia were his associates on the West Coast. Mickey Cohen and Bugsy Siegel and all of that they had established this drug ring going from Las Vegas and California and all that down to Mexico, and actually the OSS later got involved in that. So
and there's a bunch of different.
There's so many rabbit holes to go down.
They all kind of go to the same general Warren, though, right? Right, because a Warren is a bunch of rabbit burrows. Am I right about that? I can't remember like 7th grade life science anymore. Anyway, there's and I said that poorly when I said Roy fucking Cohn is at the center of it. What I was trying to get to, not well, was that because of Roy Cohn, this thing got to branch out, and you explained that much better than I did. So thank you for that. And I know you want to focus on the U.S., and I really want to get into the second part of your series. But it's worth mentioning that Meyer Lansky had this relationship with Tibor Rosenbaum, who was a Mossad point man. Wasn't he his banker through, the International Credit Bank of Geneva?
And that scandal came out in the 70s. An article I linked to there is a New York Times investigation from the period that really goes into this bank and all of its connections. And it's crazy to read. And it basically says openly that this bank was directly connected to Meyer Lansky and was laundering his money.
So I'm absolutely going to link
this
to
guy
your
was
piece.
was a Mossad asset. Sorry. And on the other side of this too, at the CIA, the guy that forged ties with Meyer Lansky was James Jesus Angleton, who was the longtime counterintelligence chief of the CIA. And this is the guy who was in charge of connections for Lansky, right? Because he forged the initial contact with Lansky. And then he was in charge of the CIA's connection with the Mossad and the FBI. So he definitely probably knew more than I found. And he also, there's some other anecdotes about Angleton in my piece, but I don't, I didn't find his direct involvement, obviously, because, I don't really think they wrote memos where they were like, hey, let's do that, I don't really think that's fair. And Angleton was really good at covering his track, but he was involved in this. He ran all these different things until 1972. So he was,
and he tried to get Israeli citizenship, right?
I believe so. I mean, he was super into Israel. I mean, he was went to Jerusalem all the time and just loved everything about it and just wanted. I wouldn't be surprised if he did that. Meyer Lansky actually did live in Israel for a few years until Golda Meir felt like it would be bad publicity. And I personally think that Golda Meir was assured that that Lansky wasn't going to actually go to jail or spill the beans or anything like that if he got sent to the U.S. Because he was never charged by the FBI for anything. He was charged by the IRS for tax evasion, and he was acquitted.
Right.
He didn't serve any prison.
Right.
He went to Israel. He's living in Israel to avoid the tax evasion charges, and then he goes back and he's not acquitted, or he's acquitted. He's not charged. He's not convicted.
That's
That's my personal opinion, especially because Lansky was so, as I mentioned, so plugged into intelligence and the FBI, and knew so much. I don't really think they wanted to screw him over, especially because he also was really powerful. I mean, he had so many connections to so many people and his hands in so many pies. And, this isn't just in New York City where he was based. This was all over. That's a total.
It really is. I mean, it extends further than Europe with this too, because Epstein had Jamal Khashoggi's brother's boat at one point, and has a lot of ties to the Saudi royal family. It's just fucking insane. I don't know how much.
I think the Saudi thing, the big deal with because he had a passport, right? That was a Saudi passport, and it was a fake passport, and Jeffrey Epstein's real name wasn't there. It had a fake name, but it had his picture, and that was discovered. But it was expired, so he hadn't been using it for a long time. He was just keeping it as a memento, a souvenir, right? Vicky Ward, who's the Vanity Fair journalist who's done a lot of reporting on Epstein for a long time, and was the only really mainstream journalist before Epstein was arrested that tried to blow the whistle on him. She says that that's because that passport exists because most likely, and she was pretty convinced of this, that he was working for Adnan Khashoggi, who is Jamal Khashoggi's uncle, I believe. And Adnan Khashoggi was the big arms dealer of the day. He was the richest Saudi businessman of the era. And he had tons of connections to tons of people, especially the Reagan White House, because he was the main arms dealer for Iran-Contra and a lot of other things that were going on during that time in covert operations for the Cold War. So that's absolutely significant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Moving into the second part of your series, and when does that come out, by the way? When does that drop?
I'm hoping next Friday. So we're short one person. So we had to work really hard to get this out today, because there's two editors at Mint Press. There's someone that does content editing for me, and there's someone that does copy editing or grammar and spelling and all that. And the copy editor is on vacation, so I had to be my own copy editor, right? And so we were short one person, and so we really had to work really hard to get it out. So and I had to make changes, obviously, and all that stuff. And it's a really long report for anyone that reads it. So it took some time. So we're hoping to not destroy ourselves, by repeating that again. So hopefully, I'm hoping for next Friday at the latest.
Awesome.
To have it out.
And so what the meat of it, God, what the fuck's going on with it? Where do you land
what's the gist of part 2? Yeah. Okay. Well, we've sort of talked about a lot of the connections that are coming up there, except for a couple. So I'm basically going to be going really deep into the Reagan White House and the Iran-Contra stuff and how all of that connects to Epstein. We're talking about how Roy Cohn and Epstein, there was this really bizarre, seamless transition of Roy Cohn's circle of friends, the people that surrounded him, how they went from Roy Cohn after he died, and just a few months later all surround and met Jeffrey Epstein, right? Which is super weird when we consider that both Roy Cohn and Jeffrey Epstein were involved in these sexual blackmail ops using minors.
So is Wexner the connection there, or is it Bob Maxwell's
let me get
daughter?
there. So the part that we didn't talk about yet is that exact thing. This is the mega group, which is what it's usually. It's this weird organization. They claim to exist for philanthropic reasons. Who knows if that's true? But what basically what we know is that there's a couple big players there. If off the top of my head, they are Michael Steinhardt and Leslie Wexner, the two of whom founded the group, according to the Wall Street Journal. A lot of people say that the Bronfmans helped found it. According to the Wall Street Journal, it was Wexner and Steinhardt. But beyond those two, the other big names are Edgar and Charles Bronfman, and after that, it's Ronald Lauder, who is the current head of the World Jewish Congress. Before Lauder, it was Edgar Bronfman. So there's a lot of connections to these guys that are there. So I haven't written the piece yet, but this is basically what it's going to say. Pretty much all of these guys, and we already talked about Sam Bronfman, right, and his ties to the mob. Pretty much all these 5 big guys in the mega group that I've named all have ties to organized crime. Michael Steinhardt's dad, and this is according to Michael Steinhardt's own autobiography, which is for people that want to check this out. It's called No Bull, My Life in and Out of the Markets. He's a hedge fund manager connected to Bear Stearns, right? Steinhardt's dad was Sol Steinhardt, who was Mayor Lansky's jewel fence. And for that offense served 5 years in Sing Sing prison because he got caught trying to launder stolen diamonds that had come from Mayor Lansky. So that's nuts.
That's insane.
The Bronfman, as we talked about, are connected to Mayor Lansky. Leslie Wexner, it turns out, in 1985 in Columbus, Ohio, there was this really bizarre mob-style murder of a lawyer who, I forget his first name, I think it was, I can't remember, but his last name was Shapiro. And this was in Columbus, Ohio. And this guy was knocking on the door of someone's apartment, and he was shot in the head twice, and it was this huge mystery. And the police report was destroyed randomly, and no one knew what it said until 1996, when the police commissioner of that city was under investigation for corruption, and it came out that the report from that original murder in 1985 was leaked by accident by the police department. And in there, it mentions Leslie Wexner, and it says that he is an associate of organized crime. And it specifically says that he's an associate of the Genovese crime family. So let's look at the Genovese crime family for a second. Who is their best known patriarch? It is Charles Lucky Luciano, who, with Mayor Lansky, co-founded the National Crime Syndicate. So this is insane. Ronald Lauder, I'll get into him too. He's also connected to Roy Cohn, by the way. Roy Cohn was honored by B'nai B'rith, which, if you don't know, is this Jewish, I would call it really a lobbying organization for Israel more than anything else. It's sort of like Freemasons, but Jewish. Yeah. Because they have these lodges and stuff, you know, but it's also the Anti-Defamation League is a branch of B'nai B'rith, right? So in 1983, Roy Cohn was honored by B'nai B'rith with a special dinner. And one of the committee members that planned this dinner for Roy Cohn was Ronald Lauder. So that's nuts. And some of these other people come up there as well at that time. Also, Edgar Bronfman was head of the ADL's fundraising arm. And so there's a bunch of really many connections there. Also, Roy Cohn's dad, Albert Cohn, who was this really influential guy in the Bronx's Democratic Party organization. He was a really influential judge. He was head of B'nai B'rith's Northeast or New York, New England division for several years.
Huh. Yeah, that I mean, that wraps it up pretty neatly. What do you have any
it's nuts.
expectations?
That's why I talked so much about Sam Bronfman in the first piece. Because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, I guess, maybe to like have him there if he wasn't involved in the sex ring. I'm talking about directly him, but it's interesting. It becomes more clear when I'm going to talk about the mega group in part 2, because I mean these Lansky ties are nuts with the mega group, especially Michael Steinhardt's dad was this jewel fence. Like, right. but that's Michael Steinhardt himself, so no one can accuse me of just like pulling that out of thin air. Read Michael Steinhardt's book; it's right in there. He talks about his dad a whole bunch.
Do you have any expectations? One, that the work that you put in on this will get picked up by a mainstream outlet, and then do you have any expectations that the Epstein case will go the way of any sort of incarnation of justice?
I think it remains to be seen if any mainstream outlet will touch this. And I'll get into this too in part 2. Roy Cohn was super connected to MSM. He had friends in pretty much every publication and every major TV news channel. So I don't really, I mean, if it gets coverage, it'll just be like, look at this loony conspiracy theory that came out about Epstein. Because, you know, publications like The Atlantic are already saying, like, any sort of conspiracy theory about this, we don't need that here.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of faith in mainstream media. That's why I don't work in it.
Right. No, me
Right.
either. That and I'm probably 100% unemployable in mainstream media. But
yeah, me too.
Having said that, this is one of those situations where regular media, mainstream media, Mockingbird media, whatever you wanna call them, have tried to pitch this 100% as either the only person Jeffrey Epstein ever knew was Donald Trump, or okay, well, he knew Bill Clinton, but you have to watch that on Sean Hannity's show to find that in a mainstream outlet. And they want people pointing at each other saying, well, your president did this shit, not stopping to think for a moment that, like,
everyone's wrapped up in it.
Yeah, multiple presidents for
it.
generations did, you know, or at least really high-ranking figures in government, and the people that ran the FBI, and the people that were part and parcel of the CIA who both orchestrated and likely participated in this shit. It's, and I think that's why we see things like the Unity for J Twitter account being taken down by this new function that Twitter's rolling out that will give individual users the ability to hide comments in their own threads. We want to make it an information or fact-free echo chamber, and I'm of the opinion that, like, we should make them suffer for that by sticking around. You know, as well as expanding our work onto different platforms, but just sticking around.
People need to do both, like you're saying. I think it's important to stay on, but definitely make an effort to migrate somewhere else. Let's remember too that Jack Dorsey recently had of Twitter, right? Recently had a meeting with Trump, and there they discussed how to like protect discourse and the public discourse before the 2020 election. I take that to mean that before the 2020 election, mid-press news and a bunch of outlets like us will be just totally.
Oh yeah,
I anytime between then and now, it's really just a matter of time. So sign up for a newsletter, please.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's
you know.
Where else is Mint Press? Where else are you? I'm, you know, Minds or Mastodon.
I'm only on Twitter right now. I don't really like Minds, and I don't really like Steemit because I feel like Minds and Steemit are similar. I feel like they're mini blogs, and I don't write separate blogs. I just write for Mint Press, and that's enough. You know, it's like a ton of work. They don't have like a news feed. The only Twitter alternative I've heard of is Mastodon and Gab. And Mastodon is more like left-wingy, and Gab is more like right-wingy, right?
Yeah.
So, I think they're both just going to be like their alternative, like super mega echo chambers. But hopefully one of them will catch on with everyone. Who knows? But I really hope people figure it out. Some things I've been trying to do, and I definitely need volunteers for it because I don't. I used to do some web design, but I don't do that anymore. This is like 5 years ago or longer. I'm trying to, I'd like to make, you know, sort of like a Drudge report that's not as ugly, you know, for a bunch of different like news outlets, you know, like have like Mint Press and like a group of news outlets. Yeah. And then they have all their RSS feeds and all their main articles in one place. So you can go to like one website, you know, and then all the new articles from those outlets are there. But I'd like to have, you know, a tab for, you know, YouTube channels or videos, people that are, you know, YouTubers, because YouTube's going to deplatform people too. And then have all their new videos up or something. I think that really needs to happen. And if anyone has time on their hands and is good at web design, get in touch with me, please.
That's fucking awesome. It's just it's such a, you're right, multiple rabbit hole subject, but it all kind of goes back into the same thing. And I've said on the show before, and I've had hosts of other like conspiracy shows on the show before, that the problem with geopolitical conspiracies is that no matter where you start looking into them, they all eventually wind up at Luciferian pedophiles run the world. And it's like, as we get more and more into not just the work that you're doing, but even the kind of like mainstream reporting that comes up on Epstein, the way that they skirt around trying to use the word pedophile or use the word or bring in, you know, more of the people that are involved in this. If you're
totally. Have you noticed that the mainstream media reports, they say stuff like underage women?
Yeah, underage women.
Don't you mean girls? Don't you mean children?
Right. Kids.
Why is that so hard to say?
Yeah, well, they can't, I mean, they can barely bring themselves to do it when the clergy goes around fucking little kids, you know, and even.
Oh, that reminds me. That reminds me. Going back to my article. Sorry, I wanted to touch on this for a second.
Cool. I have the cardinal written down here in my notes. I was hoping we'd get to.
Okay, well, we can get to that whenever you want. Then.
No, go ahead,
now's a good
please,
time.
man. Please, that was a perfect
All right,
transition.
so in my article, I talk about this sex ring that Roy Cohn was running in the Plaza Hotel in New York, and I point out that one of Roy Cohn's closest friends and clients was also a known pedophile, and his name was Cardinal Francis Spellman, and he was the head of the Archdiocese of New York for a really long time, decades. He was basically the most powerful Catholic cardinal or Catholic, priest in the entire United States. And he was widely accused of pedophilia. The former NYPD detective, James Rothstein, that I quote in the story, said that almost everything, tons of the stuff he investigated all led right to Spellman's doorstep. Yeah, and this other lawyer who separately investigated Roy Cohn and found that he had this sex ring that was based in one suite that was painted light blue, I guess for boys. It was suite 233. He said that it was there were tons of pedophiles that Roy brought there, and he was protecting. It was a pedophile protection racket. And so I think it's very possible that Spellman was involved in this, especially when you consider that J. Edgar Hoover, who was involved in this, as I point out in my article, had a sizable folder all about Cardinal Spellman's sex life. Yeah. So where'd he get that info from?
Yeah. And there's like folk songs and punk songs and shit that mention Cardinal Spellman. He's a notorious figure both in New York religious circles, but in politics and having this
and the fact that this guy who is in charge of all these he was also in charge of all these other pedophile priests in the area. Yeah. And he was plugged into this network. So, and everyone knows, because it's come out in recent years, the insane scale of Catholic Church sex abuse of children. So you have that whole scandal is plugged in here too. And so it increasingly looks like a lot of these pedophile networks that we hear about occasionally in the Catholic Church and elsewhere are very interconnected, and the people in government know about it. And these top businessmen that claim to be philanthropists know about it too.
Well,
and it's basically organized crime masquerading as our public officials and masquerading as all these nice billionaire philanthropists that are saving the world through their money.
And philanthropy and NGOs have been, fronts for some of the most horrific war crimes against humanity.
Yeah,
I want to start just like a 20-minute clips, a pop series on this show of calling out different NGOs for what they've done and where they operate and all that kind of shit. I got a weird question for you.
Okay.
What kind of healing needs to take place in the consciousness of regular fucking people for us to find a way to stop being okay with having these sick fucks rule us?
Well, I think there's a couple different ways to answer that question. One thing, for example, if we look at, pop culture in the U.S. today, there is clearly an effort, at least in mainstream pop music and TV and in different ways to really sort of normalize the sexualization of children. As an example. So let's remember, the example I like to bring up, because it doesn't make any fucking sense for this to be in a music video. I don't even remember the name of the song because I never listened to it, but I watched the video on mute because I just kind of believe it existed. Miley Cyrus did some music video where she's in a diaper, pretty much like naked, and is like crawling around and like in a crib and like sucking on a baby bottle and like making sexy poses. What the fuck is that?
Right.
Right. So, that's just one example. If you go down the rabbit hole or you start to look at, stuff being like put in front of kids, because those are kids that watch Miley Cyrus, right? Or like preteens that are into her, right? Yeah. And they're telling them that like, this is okay. people need to like be able to recognize that and also say that it's wrong. So that's just one side of it, because I mean, over the years, especially more in recent years, it's been really overt in terms of like the sort of cultural conditioning for that to be okay. It's really been more out in the open, and that's wrong. People need to be able to say that's wrong. The other thing is that, you know, if I didn't write at an outlet like Mint Press News, which is super amazing and gives me full editorial freedom, stories like this would never come out. Right. And that's because the mainstream media has people at the top. And this will be in my reports. But I mean, if you go looking, I mean, you can find other examples that are, you know, involved in this racket. Right. Or they're plugged into intelligence or, you know, I mean, they're, you know, not honest brokers of information, basically.
We call them fucking liars and people who are either on purpose or unknowingly doing the work of our intelligence communities on this show. But yeah, that's, you know, you got some freedom here, Whitney Webb. You do. I'm sure you'll be doing more interviews than this about this piece, but
yeah, I mean, I already have a couple other ones set up, right? But I think it's important to say that it's important to support independent journalism, because otherwise this information won't come out. But equally important to supporting that is what readers do with the information. If you just like say, oh my God, this is super fucked up, and you keep it to yourself, I mean, it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, I guess it helps you, you know, see things through a different lens. But it's time for people to say this is wrong, and to tell your friends and family that our government, or, well, I don't live in the U.S. anymore, but the U.S. government and really all governments in the world that are especially U.S. client states are run by criminals. They are run by criminals, and they're run by criminals that it's been this way for decades. You know, it's time to, you know, I guess open the can of worms, if you want to call it that way, and realize that our public officials for a really long time, arguably over a century, have been scummy pieces of crap and horrible criminals and exploiters of children and really bad people, and they don't belong in government. And, you know,
or near children.
I spend all my time writing and researching really and working for Mint Press. But if I had more time, and if I lived in the U.S., I would try desperately to convince people to fucking stop paying taxes to a government that is run by criminals and using your money to do this. This trafficking, especially when it's government condoned and the government's involved in the CIA is using money from you. They are using your tax money. This is what your tax money is going to. And if it's not going to that, it's going to dropping bombs on children in Yemen or other countries throughout the world. It's on drone strikes. I mean, this is what they spend your money on, and this is where your money's going.
Fuck
and at
yes,
some point,
Webb. That's fucking awesome.
But like at some point, you know, and this is part of why I wanted to leave the U.S., because I was like, fuck this, I'm never paying taxes to you assholes, and I still don't. Right? So it's like, if you consciously know this is going on and you consciously know that you're giving money to these fuckers, at some point, that's bad karma for you. If you know that you're doing it and you're giving them the money that you work for and you're consciously giving it to them and you're just okay with that because you're scared of what they're going to do, they're going to keep doing it. They only care about money. That's why Israel is so freaked out about boycott, divest, sanctions, because they're like, we might lose money. That's the only thing that works, and it's the only thing that's ever worked.
Yeah,
so,
and you've got 90% of the people running for office who openly felch the government of Israel, and maybe 10% of them that are a little less declarative about it, where I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. There non-participation in the system is something that we encourage here. I'm gonna have Tim Canova on here in a few days to explain the Taft-Hartley Act and why general strikes are currently illegal and what we can do to get around that and shit, like, because I don't
pay taxes. If enough people don't pay taxes, the IRS can't arrest all of you, period.
Right. And if we, you know, come together as a people and surround the fucking halls of power and don't let them out until we have a say in how we do this, while we're publicly exposing these pedophiles and war criminals and human rights abusers, we may have a shot there. We may, but it's down to that. I don't know.
Hope so, but honestly, based on my time in the U.S. and growing up there and living there till I was like 20 something, I don't really have a lot of confidence about people in mass getting out on the street.
Me either, but
about not paying taxes is that you can do it from the comfort of your home and never go anywhere. You just do nothing. You do less. That is so American. You just be lazier, right? Be lazier and don't file your taxes and don't give them money.
That's beautiful. That is. I would love to see that. And you know what? You pretty much get everybody that would support you on that. You would, whether or not they cross the line to do it.
Libertarians would love this.
Of course.
Taxation is theft, people, right?
Yeah.
Just stop paying it.
No, I some good friends of mine live up by Redding, California, and when they're like separated from each other in the store, one of them calls out taxation and the other one yells is theft, and that's how they Marco Polo to find each other. It's fucking like that's real shit, dude. Awesome. Shout out to Ben Balderson and Christy Jones. But yeah, we talk about a lot, especially when I have the people from Action for Assange who picked up the Unity for J Vigils and now host Free Assange online vigils, Andrew Smith and Taylor Hudak. We talk about decentralized activism and making sure that you do like small acts of disobedience every day. And if you could build the movement for this, you're absolutely right. That could shut it down. It could.
Well, I hope it happens. I hope. But I honestly think that it's going to take something bigger even than this, because I mean, there's such they have a really tight flow over information and a really strong hold still on the hearts and minds of people. But I really hope that, these articles especially will start to make people think a little more about what's really going on.
Absolutely.
I also want to bring up something about just how sick this is when you think about people like QAnon, as an example, and other Trump supporters that think that this guy is in office to bust all the pedophiles. Okay, so not only was he meant by a pedophile, he was friends with a pedophile, right? And there's evidence that he may have hosted like underage teenage girl pedophile parties too.
Well, he's part of a 2016 rape case with Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump named as the co-defendants, and one of those women specifically cited death threats and fear for her life as a reason for dropping out of the suit. Like, that's, I don't know how the Q crowd reconciles that bit. I don't.
Well, the other thing about QAnon that's interesting is that they claim, this is the idea behind it anyway, or part of it, is that Donald Trump was put in power by people that were allies of John F. Kennedy to fight against the deep state, and the deep state set up by Allen Dulles, the first CIA director.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As my article shows pretty clearly, Trump's on the other side. Trump works with the people that killed JFK.
Yeah.
He works with the people connected to the Dulles brothers.
Yes.
And their descendants and the people that took over for them. That's what Trump works for.
Well, and he's an open, blatant. He's an open, blatant Zionist.
Yeah.
If you, I mean, they renamed the
actually that ADL dinner, or that B'nai B'rith dinner I mentioned in 1983 that Roy Cohn was honored by.
Yeah.
The honorary chairman of that dinner of B'nai B'rith and the ADL and all that
was Donald Trump.
Yeah, Donald Trump, honorary chairman of the B'nai B'rith dinner for Roy Cohn.
Yeah.
And, Trump has been really in that for a long time. He's always been surrounded by really extremist Zionists, like David Friedman, and the Kushner family, right? Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner, his family foundation gave money to this extremist settlement yeshiva religious school called Od Yosef Chai. sorry, I had to remember the name because I wrote about this like 3 weeks ago. And that yeshiva, the people that are in charge of it and that run it, wrote a book called The King's Torah, where they, that's the translation from Hebrew. It's not in English, but they openly call for the murder of babies that aren't Jewish because they might grow up to be a threat to them.
Yeah.
This is on the record. I didn't make this up. I mean, look it up. It's even in the Washington Post. So, and he wasn't the only one that gave money to them either. The Marcus brothers of Marcus Textile Company in New York are the main funnelers of money to that yeshiva. And that's legal to do. And they're extended members of Roy Cohn's family, the Marcuses.
And don't the Kushners also, like, in one of their businesses, settlement brokerage? Isn't that kind of what, like, part of what they do?
I mean, Kushner and Friedman and Jason Greenblatt, who are all these people in charge of the Israel portfolio for the Trump administration, are huge backers of illegal settlements. Jason Greenblatt used to guard an illegal settlement with like an automatic weapon, and that's the guy in charge of the Middle East peace process. A guy that was literally guarding an illegal settlement with like a giant gun.
Yeah, if you had somehow stumbled upon this channel and you're one of those people that have ever said trust the plan out loud, like, go bash your fucking head against a wall. You're living a goddamn delusion. Like, step away from the thing a little bit, realize how fucking cartoonish all of it has to be in order for you to believe it, and leave the queue.
Well, I think QAnon was a brilliant psyop.
Me too.
It was a brilliant psyop, and it's directly out of the Cass Sunstein guidebook, who by the way was an Obama administration guy.
Yes.
On how to co-opt conspiracy movements, right? So there was Pizzagate and all this stuff, and there comes QAnon right away to take.
Yeah. Oh. Shoot.
As many people out of that as possible, and
what?
That is a lot of them think that there's going to be a metaphysic, and that's going to save the world. And there's a bunch of Christian Zionist overtones to QAnon as well. So really successful psyop. Right there, all done through 8chan.
I'm really glad that you said that, because this has been my argument from day one, and I've had a similar conversation about this with Elizabeth Voss. She was on the show like a month or something ago, and threw out the word hope porn for what Q is, and to me it's always looked like 100%. This is to make sure that people who would otherwise become activated aren't, because they're waiting for that second shoe to drop that will never fucking drop. And it's a way
that will never drop.
Yeah. And it's a way to monitor.
He tells people to follow John Bolton. What the hell? Anyone that believed the premise of QAnon, thinking that John Bolton's one of the good guys, you're nuts. There was a fucking meme, a QAnon meme of John Bolton adjusting his glasses like this, and some guy drew a Q here and was like, "It's the secret Q sign. John Bolton's doing it. Are you high, dude?"
Clearly, better living through chemicals on that. I think that original Anonymous was started out as a psyop or quickly became one, and Q is the fucking antithesis.
It's totally a psyop now. That all of that is super co-opted. They were like, "Yeah, war with Iran," and they're like, "Yay, regime change in Libya in 2011." What?
Yeah, but getting that through to people who actually have attached religion, or like Christian Zion, all that, but putting it into a religious context makes it a lot harder to talk sense into other people who otherwise maybe started out as like anti-interventionist, or if even anti-federal government, but not okay, but now we need to go invade Iran. It's just it's incredible to me. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up in terms of this? Do you have anything? And please.
I think we touched on the big stuff. I just As a concluding point, because my source of internet, which is my phone, is about to die. As a concluding thing about what my report shows really, and in the context of the Jeffrey Epstein case as a whole, this is massive, dude. It totally makes sense why Trump doesn't want this to come out. I know at the end of my article that this whole thing is also Roy Cohn and all that is also directly connected to Bill Clinton. All the big names connected to Epstein are connected to Roy Cohn, period. Roy Cohn was one of the most influential figures of the 1980s. You may not know that, but that's what the evidence says. He was the link between the criminal underground and the people above ground in respectable society, in the private business sphere, and in politics. This was the it guy, and this is what he was doing. This is what he was running, and Jeffrey Epstein is one of his successors. And Jeffrey Epstein was doing this in multiple countries. How many more Jeffrey Epsteins are there? I really think people should, take a look at the big picture, and think about what the implications of this are. And if you feel powerless to do something, and this makes you really mad and you want to do something, like we all mentioned, right? There's a ton of rabbit holes here. Go down some of them, dude. Make Twitter threads, write articles on blogs, whatever. If you don't want to write anything, you can send info to me. You can send info to any journalist covering the sort of stuff, and help get the info out. This should be a group effort to expose these assholes and these criminals who are torturing children. Let's remember, too, what happens to the children that pass through here. What happens to them? I mean, even if you think about the child abuse scandals, like just in the Catholic Church, right? Those kids grow up and they become adults and they commit suicide, or they abuse people because they're so broken inside because they were tortured and exploited and abused by these monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So let's consider that too, what's going on and how it's affecting our society, and that this is really the root of a lot of problems that are going on right now. And the people in charge are doing it, and they need to be held accountable, and on a huge scale, I
couldn't agree with you more. Whitney, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to hang out today. Mint Press News is where you can find Whitney's work. You also have a podcast that you do through Mint Press. Yes?
Yeah, I do, but it's on hiatus because I was sick. If you didn't hear me coughing there for a little bit, I was really sick last week. So I didn't have one last week, and we're changing up the podcast a little bit. It's going to be a little bit different. So that was also part of the reason for the pause. So that should be starting up again next week.
Awesome.
And you can find the existing podcast right on the Mint Press News homepage. There's a big banner, and you just click on it.
Absolutely. And I cite Mint Press News, and not just your work specifically, but the outlet in general, fucking all the time on this show. Like, it's one of the most consistent sources for genuine journalism that we have.
Yeah, we really try. I mean, we work really hard, and we can't do it without reader support. We're 100% reader funded. We used to get money from Google ads. We got totally demonetized from that.
I can't imagine.
So we are 100% dependent on donations, either directly through the website or on Patreon. If you think this report that I wrote is important, or you think the work that Mint Press does in general is important, please consider supporting us. The lowest tier on Patreon is $5 a month. If that's too much for you, you can donate less through our website. But everything helps and goes towards supporting the kind of work that we're doing.
So please do that, and you can follow Whitney Webb at _Whitney Webb on Twitter. Whitney, thank you so much. And before your phone completely freezes out on us or whatnot, I will let you go. I appreciate it. Please come back on the show sometime. You're welcome here whenever. This has been fucking fantastic.
Thanks for the invitation and for having me on. It was nice to be able to talk informally and to talk about this and be allowed to swear.
Yes, you can always do that here. Well, all right. You have a wonderful day, and I'm going to go ahead and click off, and I will talk to the audience for a moment. Really appreciate you. You have a fantastic rest of your week.
Okay.
All right, bye, Whitney.
Thanks. Likewise. Bye.
And Whitney Webb, everybody. Holy crap, that was goddamn amazing. I am incredibly stoked at the way that went. And holy shit, guys, that has been Slow News Day. I'm Steve Poikinen. Good luck to us all.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Whitney Webb on Slow News Day. That's pretty cool. Did you notice his T-shirt said CIA? It's pretty cool with the styled after the Coca-Cola logo. Pretty interesting. Whitney Webb, amazing, just an amazing young lady, up and coming star, brilliant researcher and journalist. She wasn't familiar to me until just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, a few friends of mine have been posting her articles on Facebook, but I didn't really pay much attention until I saw her covering the Epstein scandal. This young lady is amazing. Okay, this is just a section of part 1, but I'm not gonna put you through the torture of me reading it to you. You can read it for yourself. This section in itself is just amazing. It's got all kinds of intrigue and interesting little facets to it. But let's take a look at Whitney Webb's bio before we take off here. We're almost 2 hours in, so I'm not going to try and give you too much more. Let's just take a look. This is who Whitney Webb is. I mean, this young lady is brilliant. I mean, any father would be proud of this young girl. Whitney Webb's bio, you can find her on Mint Press News. Okay, Whitney Webb is a Mint Press News journalist based in Chile. She has contributed to several independent media outlets, including Global Research, great articles on Global Research, EcoWatch, never heard of them, they're probably pretty good if she's worked there, Ron Paul Institute, and 21st Century Wire, among others. She has made several radio and television appearances in the 2019 and is the 2019 winner of the Serena Shim Award for uncompromised integrity in journalism. And I would have to say, after reading her articles, her integrity is pretty much uncompromised. This is a brilliant young lady. And just one thing I wanted to read to you from her new article, her new post. I mean, this is like a nutshell of what's going on today. The title is Government by Blackmail, Jefferey Epstein's Trump's mentor and the dark secrets of the Reagan era. Appalling for both the villainous abuse of children itself and the chilling implications of government by blackmail. This tangled web of unsavory alliances casts a lurid light on the political history of the U.S. from the Prohibition era up to the age of Trump. Now here's what I want you to take away from this. This Epstein scandal, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, the media is whitewashing it. They're trying to give you a watered down version. They're saying, oh, it's just Jeffrey Epstein and, Ghislaine Maxwell too. These are the two you need to look at. And even in some of the videos, I won't pull it up, it's an RT video. RT is whitewashing it. When they're doing their coverage on the Epstein scandal, they pull in a vignette that blurs everything out, and it blurs out Trump and his wife, and so they just focus right in on Epstein and Ghislaine. So I wouldn't even trust RT in their reporting so much on this article or on this scandal. What I want you to take away from this is that the Jeffrey Epstein scandal is most likely, now this is my conjecture, this is what I'm getting from the research that I've been doing, most likely the Jeffrey Epstein scandal is brought about to keep your attention focused there. There is a broader spectrum event that's happening, and that is and if you watch True News, I think these guys have their finger on the pulse. There is an Israeli coup taking place. Israel is deep inside America, and this blackmail ring shows the tools that they have and the means they have to wield power over our politicians and over the important people in our country. You know, you had the whole Mueller investigation, Russian collusion, BS. We all know it was BS, and it was being put on by the Democrats. If you're smart, you know that the Democrats and the Republicans are both two wings of the same bird of prey. If you're in the Trump camp or if you're in the Democrat camp, I'm sorry for you. You need to rise above the game. The left versus right paradigm is nothing more than mind control. It's mass mind control. And if you're playing your camp against the other camp, or your hero versus the other hero, Trump versus whoever it is in the Democrat Party today, get rid of that. Wake up, rise above the game, understand that the left versus right paradigm is just mind control. Rise above the game, wake up, and see what it is. See it for what it is. Now, in this first article that Whitney Webb has written, the first part, it's a 3-part now. It was going to be 2 parts, but now it's going to be 3 parts because there's so much information she couldn't get it all out on time. In just this first part alone, she covers the players in the Epstein scandal, the professional blackmail ring, this Israeli Mossad operation, which it probably wasn't always Israeli Mossad, but it might have been always Israeli Mossad. But it goes deep, and it goes long, and it goes far back. The history is long. In just part 1 alone, she covers Jeffrey Epstein, Roy Cohn, Alex Acosta, Samuel Bronfman. He was a major mob boss. Louis Rosenstiel, another major mob boss. J. Edgar Hoover, who was actually a blackmail victim. Senator McCarthy, who was close pals with Cohen for a while until, some stuff went wrong and their relationship had to be torn apart because Cohen made some miscalculations. She even covers Reagan and Rupert Murdoch in just part 1 alone. This girl is a powerhouse of research. She has done her homework. If you look at the links, she has gone so far back. She has mad research skills. This girl is amazing. I recommend you read her articles, parts 1 and part 2, and wait for part 3 with bated breath. Just amazing. So that's all I've got for you for now. There's not really anything more I can share with you that will put any more value into this. I want to thank you if you watched this long. Thank you for watching and sticking with me. I know we're almost 2 hours in, but this is important information, and this has to do with our country. The thing is that while the mainstream media wants to whitewash this and let you look at it for now and forget about what's really happening to America and then put it away, I encourage you, if you have any journalistic ability, get involved. Start digging in yourself, because there is so much here, so much more even than what Whitney Webb has dug up. There are, and for you out there who are saying that Trump is making this happen and that's why the pedophiles are going, no, it's not. It has nothing to do with it. Trump is deeply involved. If it wasn't for alternative media, real alternative media, not this crappy whitewashed alt-right garbage like Stephen Monolou and Alex Jones and all them, real dedicated alt media channels who are getting attacked on YouTube, if it wasn't for these people digging in, I don't think any of this would have come to the surface. If Mossad and Israel decided to burn Epstein and maybe even burn Ghislaine Maxwell, it's really more than likely just a distraction. And it's a dangerous distraction because they do risk those of us out there who are paying attention digging deeper into this and then exposing the deeper assets that are involved in this. And this could bring the country down. So this is something serious to think about. So as you go away from this video, I want you to take it away with you. Go read Whitney Webb's article because it's very important. Very good information. Amazing information. Take notes. Then don't just ignore it. Do what you can to help expose the rest of this. I mean, this is an important time in the history of America right now, so just take this seriously. Okay? And I hope you enjoyed this broadcast, and I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you learned a whole lot, because I sure did. So that's it for now. This is Red Pill signing off, and remember, the truth is out there waiting to be found. See right there? Red Pill Infowar. Check out the blog. Good night, and
remember,
yeah.
the truth is out there waiting to be found. Wake up, take the red pill, join the Red Pill Infowar. Break the matrix, free your mind.
Take the red pill.